Bruce and I want to welcome you as well to this webinar, and I want to state up front that we don't offer any magic answers or any simple solutions to the economic kind of challenges that many congregations are facing now. But we do have some particular goals that we think are manageable and that are appropriate for our conversation. One is that we see this really as a time to examine the kinds of choices that you can make as a congregation or as a leader within a congregation, particularly looking at some of the patterns and the kinds of choices that you can make or the kind of perspective that you can take to this challenge. Second of all, we want to explore together in our conversations, what does really preparing for a rebound even now, what does that really mean? What are some of the practices that you can engage in as a leader or as a congregation as you begin to prepare for a rebound? And then we also want to offer some particular strategies that we think would be useful. So to dive right in, let's talk about the choices that face us as leaders or as congregations as we look at the kind of challenges that surround us both in our culture but also in many of our congregations. And I think there are at least two kinds of choices, two patterns. One would be the limiting responses that one could make, those responses that oftentimes limit one's capacity to be creative and thoughtful, and also limit the range of responses through oftentimes a negative view or a problem-focused view of things. And then there are the constructive responses, the responses that can be made that are ones that construct new possibilities for the congregation itself. Even now, as we're preparing, another way to talk about the limiting responses is the proverbial, the glass is half empty. And I have noticed in congregations oftentimes there can be a pattern of telling the problem-saturated story and moving into a pattern of oftentimes just being problem-focused, which over time can have the effect of not just cutting back one's budget, but can also cut back on the capacities for faith, for the capacities for hope, and for the capacities for charity within the congregation. The limiting responses can begin to take on a life of their own. They can begin to, in a sense, build upon each other so that things are not only bad, but we can begin to look at how they could even get worse. And so they can kind of take on a contagion within our conversations, within our role as leaders, or within the congregation. But they all are going to rebound from different places. We all have different patterns already operating within a congregation. And so it's important for us to reflect on what is our current posture, what's our particular composure now as a congregation. So we might want to ask ourselves, what's the often cited story that we already have in our congregation around finances or generosity? Is there a problem-saturated story that's self-reinforcing, that tends to limit our capacity to look beyond the problem to also begin to see some possibilities and some avenues and strategies for rebounding?